On behalf of Clyde Companies, it's truly my honor to introduce our 18th governor of the state of Utah, Spencer Cox. His dedicated public service, his exceptional intellect and acumen, his commitment to principles of conservatism and constructive public dialogue are all broadly recognized and well documented. What I'm not sure is broadly known is his gifted maneuver on a dirt bike. You know, the one you see a renegade 13-year-old riding in the neighborhood? His breathtaking skills certainly impressed me when I viewed a rough cut video, hard rock blaring, where he positioned said dirt bike on a hill, sped down the hill, went airborne off the ramp, and elegantly managed an impressive full flip, dismantling midair and landing in the water. When I was serving as Deputy Chief of Staff and Communications Director to our 17th governor, a young rising star was named our new Lieutenant Governor, and I deeply wanted him to be taken seriously as the next man in line to the governor. And I advised then Representative Cox that he might want to consider eliminating such videos from his social media feed. I know you remember this conversation. Today, Governor, you and I are both more than a decade older, and given the numerous political battles behind you and your totally legit governance of the state of Utah, I think 1 week from today would be the perfect day for you to repost said video again on your newsfeed. We're honored to have you join us for this important conversation and grateful for your work to find solutions for Utah's housing challenges. Governor Spencer Cox, the time is yours.
Thank you, Ali, for that very kind introduction. I don't even know if I can find that video, but I may have to go look again. So it's so great to see you. It's great to see all of you. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to thank Sutherland for the just impressive work that they do in our state, continue to do. I mean, you guys are you're the Freddie Freeman of Utah right now. You're on a heater. It's really impressive what you're doing to help make Utah better. Sorry for the Yankees fans in the room to bring up such a sore subject. I also want to thank the American Enterprise Institute for the work that they're doing. I'm your biggest fan, and I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had to collaborate with you and attend many of your seminars and symposiums. We're fortunate to be able to live in this state, a state where we care about solving problems and doing our best to make the world a better place. I appreciate again everyone in the room, especially those who have come from outside of Utah to join us. I want to thank Ben for joining us as well. I have the opportunity now to serve as a co-chair of the National Housing Crisis Task Force, and I'm honored to be able to add Utah's voice to what is an issue, of course, not just here in Utah, but all across the United States and really all across the developed world. I have had conversations with my friends in the UK and Canada and other places where they are facing similar challenges. Now, the challenge before me today is that I've been speaking about this for quite a while, and I've had an opportunity to work very closely with so many legislators who are here in the room. I want to thank them for everything that they're doing, for their leadership to help move us in a more positive direction, to help add more supply, to lower the price of housing here. I want to thank the League of Cities and Towns as well, who are here with us, and representatives there for their collaboration. The challenge I face today is that most of you have heard me talk on this subject far too many times, and the last thing you want to hear is me rant about what we need to do and how to solve this problem. And yet, I think these are issues that bear repeating. So I'm going to leave more time for questions, and I'm grateful for and I apologize that I haven't been here the entire day, and that I have to leave again. Such is the life of a governor, especially 1 week before an election. And there's nothing going on out there right now, I know, but I'm just trying to figure out if I'm garbage or you're garbage or who is garbage today. But we're all here, and I'm excited to be able to have this conversation with all of you. So look, I just got back from a conference, the Money 2020 conference down in Las Vegas, where I was fortunate enough to represent the state of Utah on the main stage. For those of you not familiar with Money 2020, it's the largest fintech conference in the world. Fintech leaders from all over the globe convene in Las Vegas. They've been there for more than a decade, and it's a conference that continues to grow. And again, I had an opportunity to speak on kind of what's happening in Utah. First governor, at least the only governor this year. There may have had governors in the past on the main stage, but it's very rare. And the reason I was there is a whole bunch of people can't figure out why Utah is being mentioned in the same breath when it comes to fintech as places like London and New York and San Francisco. And so it's always fun when I get a chance to explain to people the great things that are happening in Utah. Now, that may come as a surprise to some of you who aren't from here to learn that Utah is one of the fintech capitals of the world. We have a long history of leadership in financial services. 90% of the industrial banking in the world, in the United States, happens right here in the state of Utah. And so we're very fortunate. Last week, the study comes out that shows that Utah is leading the country in manufacturing, which is a surprise to a lot of people who aren't from Utah. The largest increase in manufacturing jobs anywhere in the United States over the past 5 years right here in the state of Utah. And I could go through the list, and I do often, especially when you're running for office. It's a good time to remind people how great the state of Utah is and how lucky we are to be here. And yet, with all of that success comes challenges, right? I often hear from Utahns that, hey, we got to stop. We're done growing. Let's just be done. And I would love to do that. I would. I've jokingly said many times, let's build a wall around Utah and make California pay for it. But that's not how any of this works. I know a couple of the legislators were still awake during my last State of the State address when I spoke on this piece, and I mean this sincerely. The only way to stop growing is to be really bad at what we do, to be terrible as a state. I can tell you there are states that aren't seeing growth. And those aren't the best places to be. You really don't have a choice. You're either succeeding or you're not. And people vote with their feet and move with their feet. And so does capital, of course. Capital follows and goes to places where it is welcomed and where innovation is happening. Just today, we had an AI policy conference, incredible room. People, again, from all over the country and all over the world were there to learn about what we're doing with AI policy and how unique it is that we're doing something different than anywhere else in the country. Now, I don't know if AI is going to solve all of our problems or destroy the world in the next few years. It's one of those two, apparently, from everything I read. But what we decided to do was something, again, very, very unique, and that is that we created an AI policy lab with true experts. We hired a professor from Brigham Young University who is running that AI policy lab, and we invite 8 new AI companies to come into the policy lab to sit down with us and to figure out how to do this together. We'll actually sign an agreement with them that allows them to go forward with protections in place for the public, but gives them the opportunity to go forward and develop these new technologies and implement these new technologies without worrying that the state is just going to come in and change the rules at the last minute and destroy their investments. The only thing worse than a no when you're running a business is I don't know, maybe. Like that's the worst possible thing. You're never going to invest. You've got to have the confidence that you can do what you're going to do. Now, what does this have to do with housing? Well, the success that we're having, of course, is part of the reason that people want to come here. This great nation on which the great idea on which this great nation was founded. One of those ideas, as my friend from my AEI, Yuval, writes in his latest book that everyone should read, called American Covenant, talks about that federalism piece. That the states would be laboratories of democracy, that we would all get to try stuff and see what works and what doesn't work. And because what we're trying here is working, more and more people are coming here. I've been misquoted many times. I'm sure I'm the only one, but on this particular one that I said, I hate Californians coming to Utah, and I don't want any more Californians to come to Utah and Californians to stay there. What I said was, I wish that California would adopt more of Utah's policy so people didn't feel like they had to leave California and come here. And that matters. Now, what I can tell you is, as I've met with my fellow governors on this particular issue, as the previous chair of the National Governors Association through July, we had an incredible meeting in February in Washington, D.C., where this was one of the topics. What are we going to do about housing prices? And I would recommend it to you. I believe it's online. I think you can go Google that and watch it. And the reason I would encourage you to watch it is not just because of the ideas that came up. There were several great ideas, and I suspect that the ideas that have been presented here today are better than the ones we were talking about. The reason I would commend it to you is because unless if you came from another planet or another country and had no idea who any of these governors were, which by the way is most of the country would have no idea who any of these governors were, but and you actually listen to the conversation, it would be almost impossible for you to figure out who were the Republicans and who were the Democrats in the room. And that's one of the great things about being a governor, as opposed to a member of Congress, is that as a governor, you actually have to get stuff done. And you actually have to solve problems. And Congress used to think that. They don't anymore, which is fine, I guess. But what we heard was true curiosity and a willingness to learn and try things, trying to figure out how to solve this problem. Now, I feel very lucky to be the governor of the state of Utah, because if there is one thing, and going back to the conference in Vegas that I just returned from, the conversation there was about what is it that makes Utah so different and unique. On the one hand, and I think there were two things, and there are probably others, but one, we have a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. And so it's part of our DNA. I think it's part of our DNA because so many people who came here in the late 1840s and 1850s and 1860s to a place that Western settlers had skipped on purpose. They were going around this place because there were better places, easier places to make a living and make a life that were not here. Fairly inhospitable and just a real difficult place to survive in. And so the people that came here had to be entrepreneurial. They had to figure it out. Literally, their lives depended on it. And I think that is an ethos that has certainly been passed down through the generations and shared for those that grew up here or have been here for generations or have moved here. So that's the first piece. But the second piece is just as important, because there's rugged individualism all over the Western United States. I mean, that's kind of, again, the ethos is this rugged individualism that we're so proud of. But something was very different here, because you couldn't just survive with rugged individualism. No matter how entrepreneurial you were, there was also a deep sense of community that came up here, that we are all in this together and we actually have to help each other out. Very famously, Brigham Young, in settling this part of the country, made sure that the people, when they started their agriculture endeavors, which was the first industry to come here, that they did not live on their farms, which is very different. If you look at the Midwest and you drive through, or really anywhere else in the country, you see these farms with farmhouses out on the farms. You'll see some of that here, but much less. What he understood was that the community needed each other. And so no one lived on their farms. They built communities together and went out to their farms. That was, again, very intentional. This idea that we're going to have to work together and collaborate to solve problems. I believe that is also in our DNA. And you don't have to take my word for it. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce a few years ago, when they named Utah the best state to do business, said that the secret sauce of Utah was collaboration, our willingness to work together to solve problems. And so I truly believe that what we've been doing over the past few years, especially in this last legislative session, again, I want to thank our legislators. I want to thank Steve Waldrop for taking a huge cut in pay to join me on this crazy journey when this became my number one priority. It's not my number one, my number two, and my number three priority, to reduce the cost of housing by increasing supply, and specifically around starter homes and giving people an opportunity once again to achieve the American dream. I believe that there is nothing more important than the work that we are doing here today. I mean that sincerely. Like, this is the thing. That's how I arrived at this. I had a friend ask me, you're number one in all of these categories. If 20 years from now, there's a governor who's number 37 in all of those categories, what will have taken us from 1 to 37. And as I tried to answer the question, it became crystal clear to me that the answer is the price of housing. If our kids and grandkids cannot afford to live here and have to go elsewhere, we will lose that DNA. The things that make us so special will absolutely be gone. And there is nothing, I think, more important than we can do. I believe it's a moral imperative that we provide the American dream to our kids and grandkids, that they can actually be better off than we are. That's what the American dream is all about. It always has been, making life better for the next generation. And if they are the first generation in Utah's history to be worse off than their parents and grandparents, we will have failed indeed. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Please.
You described the states as the laboratories of democracy. Isn't it a good idea? Well, first of all, a lot of conservatives confuse the 10th Amendment with home rule. Why not use preemption to greater effect to eliminate the lack of uniformity between land use and tenant-landlord? Indiana took the step in their legislative session not too long ago to preempt all tenant-landlord. So it's made at the state level, and it creates uniformity. But a lot of conservative legislators are averse to it because they're concerned that it's eating into local control. But the Dillon rule in his decision established that states can eliminate local government if they were stupid enough to do that. But can't you take leadership in Utah to begin to selectively just say, no, we're not going to allow that. We're going to have uniform land use in the state.
Yes. So two questions there. So first of all, when we talk about preemption, I just want to be very clear that you're talking about state versus local preemption, not the federal government coming into it, because I want to be as crystally clear as I can on this. Every time a presidential candidate talks about how they're going to solve this problem, I get extremely nervous. I think that one of the biggest mistakes we've made as a country is this idea. In fact, I would argue that one of the reasons we're so polarized today is this idea that what's good for one is good for all, and it's led us to a place where we should be very different. Utah should be different from California, should be different from Georgia, should be different from Maine. Now, at the local, state and local level, I agree with everything that you said. That yes, it is absolutely in the purview. Unlike the federal constitution, our state constitution does not provide that there is a distinction. That cities and towns are creations of the state, and so the state absolutely has the legal authority to do that. Now the question is whether it's a good idea or not, and I've made the case, and by the way, there has been some of that happening in Utah, for sure. We have made decisions at the state level where there has been some, I'll use the term preemption because you did, and we've tried to do that judiciously. We've tried to do it sparingly. I will also say, for those who don't know, I am a former mayor, former city council member, and a former county commissioner, and so I'm also a Jeffersonian in some ways. I truly believe that the government closest to the people is the best. But I've made the case that as a political science major, that there are certain times and in certain areas where the incentive structure does not align the way it should. We certainly see that in a tragedy of the commons type situation. I like to use the company microwave as the best example of this. If everybody gets the benefit of the microwave but nobody pays the cost, you're going to have a really dirty microwave all of the time, right? Because I get to cook my burrito in there, but I'm not going to clean it because somebody else can clean it, right? So we have kind of the other side of the coin, tragedy of the commons, that is happening here, where everybody knows we have a problem. Everybody wants this problem solved. We just don't want these houses built or these apartments built where I can see them, right? And so that's where we get this NIMBYism. And so it does make sense at some level that you have to make the bad guy not the guy closest to it. I hear this often from city council members and planning commission members who come to me and say, hey, I know we need to do this, and I want to do this. And the minute I do this, there's going to be a referendum. It's going to get overturned, so the project's not going to get built anyway, and then I'm going to get voted out of office. And so that's not very helpful, right? And yet, I also don't want all of our cities and towns to look exactly like each other. I think that's a mistake too. I think it's important that we have differences and diversity in the way our cities and towns look. Park City should look a little different than Fairview, and Fairview should look a little different than Salt Lake City, and that's okay. You don't have to all be the same. And so, again, going back to our secret sauce, I believe in collaboration, and we'll continue to work with our cities and towns to do this. But I've also said, like, if you don't play ball, then it will be forced upon you. And so I think we have to hold that incentive out there at some level. And again, these are the debates we're going to have. So sorry, that's a long answer that didn't really answer your question. But I think in some instances, yes, but we've got to be really careful how we do it. Please.
Well, thank you for your support of local governance and your background in that. I really like that. And we're here at a Solutions Summit, but I think to a large extent, as you alluded to, we've had, since the time I was elected mayor, some 25, 26 pieces of legislation that have been passed. And it's trying to work on this issue. And to a large extent have preempted local governance. But Mayor Ramsey made the point as a panelist earlier that we need to give it time, because we have hundreds of thousands of housing units that are entitled. I mean, just in my corner of Salt Lake Valley, 35,000. And in one area in particular, it's been entitled that way since I first got on the council before becoming mayor for over 10 years, and less than 10% of the housing that's approved there, that's entitled, has even been built. And we're even along major transportation corridors. And so I think from the city's perspective, there's been a lot of work to this end. We kind of need to see it through. And then just one issue that I'm seeing is that we do have a housing issue, but unfortunately a lot of that finite materials, labor, land is constructing housing units that are going for rent.
Yeah.
And it was good to hear Steve talk about this, and another panelist that said, we've got to do something.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in my own community, hundreds of units that are all for rent. Mayor Ramsey mentioned the same. The Point of the Mountain, the first 2,000 units are all going for rent. I mean, what's happening here? We need to be able to allow home ownership so that people can gain equity and start to build wealth.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. So two issues there I'll just respond to. Let me take the second one first. Couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right. This has been a real concern for me. Look, I'm a free market guy. I absolutely believe in the market. In fact, the only way to solve this is with market solutions, right? However, there is nothing free market about the way we do housing in this country. There just isn't, and we're all kidding ourselves if we think there is. I'm going to be very practical about this. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of all zoning laws and just let the market do what the market would do. That's one way to solve it for sure. And so I believe we have to work within the constraints that are presented to us in a very practical way. And one of those is, again, we have to look at what we're incentivizing right now, because government is incentivizing. Every decision that government makes adds cost to housing. Period. End of story. Okay. So just every time you make a decision or don't make a decision, not making a decision, as something I said earlier, is the worst possible thing you can do for this housing. So every day longer it takes you to approve something, you're adding cost to housing. Okay. Just this is not an opinion. This is fact. And yet one of the things that we have decided that we're going to allow to happen is we're allowing institutional buyers to buy up existing housing stock and turn it into rental. Right? That's deeply concerning. We've decided, and I thought it was the right decision at the time as a free market person. I'm now questioning the decision I made in 2017 when I supported it. I was lieutenant governor at the time, or whenever it was. Maybe it was before that. That we would allow unfettered access to Airbnbs and the short-term rental market. Right? We have, I think, there's different numbers, but we probably have somewhere between 25 and 30,000 homes that are in the short-term rental market right now in the state of Utah. And again, when you have a limited supply of something that we desperately need and we're taking that out, that's why with the new homes that we're doing, with the new starter home project, we are for the first time allowing deed restrictions on those homes, that they must be owner occupied. So absolutely agree that we have to rethink this if this is, it's a choice, if this is what we want. Now, to the other point about what's working and not working and how long it's taking, I think you make a very persuasive argument that we've passed all of this. We have to allow it to take effect. I agree that we have to do that, but I think the better question is, why do we have 200,000 papered lots that are not being built on? And what can we do to incentivize that to make it happen, which is part of what we're doing with these 3% loans for starter homes. And listening and learning and understanding, is it an infrastructure piece? If it's an infrastructure piece, then is there more that we can do to help get the infrastructure there? And so again, I want to be very transparent. Like, I'm at everything right now. I mean, if it's an idea and it can get me 5 more houses, I say do it. I'm really supportive of anything we can do to significantly increase what's happening out there. Please.
Governor, you mentioned infrastructure. We've heard a lot of discussion about the need to break down barriers for infrastructure, specifically for housing. Would you support more action on that during the 2025 legislative session, and what would that look like?
Yeah, I would, Katie. And I don't know exactly what that would look like now, but I can tell you that we are having these conversations. So we actually do have a couple sessions ago. It all runs together now, but we have a mechanism, a vehicle to be able to do more of that. So we have an infrastructure loan fund that we can capitalize more, that we can figure out how to make that work better. So I think that's one area where we certainly could do more, and willing to work with our legislative partners to make that happen. I will also say we're doing some other things you may have heard of. We're doing we're looking at state land all across the state, doing an inventory of state land, figuring out if there are places where the state owns, because one of the biggest drivers of cost right now is the cost of land, right? And so if there are places where we could lease property to a developer for $1 to build more dense housing and get people, again, home ownership, which I think is critical, and that can come in the form of condos and townhomes, again, getting a foot in the door where people are starting to build equity. Could we do that on state land? We have Mike Lee, who's running a bill, hoping to get some bipartisan support around an inventory for federal land inside of our cities and outside of our cities, with that's BLM land where we could do the same thing. So again, we're trying to get as creative as possible, and especially if there's infrastructure adjacent to some of these state lands, UDOT-owned property, for example, then we should be taking advantage of that. Other questions? We're probably close on our time, but I think I have a couple more minutes.
What do you think? Sorry.
Yeah, we'll go
What
here.
do you think should be in the statewide housing plan? And is there an upzoning element to that? What should that look like? And what else should the legislature do?
Yeah, so I'm not willing to comment publicly exactly, because those discussions are happening right now. But I just want to be clear, and I think I have, that what I want to see is more equity in the hands of more Utahns. That's it for me. Bringing down the price of housing. This is one where a lot of. I was told by a lot of people, don't do this, don't take this on, this will not end well for you, and they may very well be right. But the reason is that it's very complicated. There are if it was easy, someone would have figured it out now. But there are thousands of different inputs that are causing this to happen, and so that's the first reason. The second reason is it's really easy to tell if you're successful or not. And I don't get to come out and say, hey, we succeeded. We built a whole bunch more houses. I don't get to do that. Everybody will know if we succeeded or not by how much they're paying for a house. Does the median price of a house in Utah stay at $500,000 or more, or can we get it down to $375,000? That's going to be the tell, right? Either we figure this out and we solve it, or we don't. And I think it's worth figuring out. So do we have another question? Please, we'll do both of you.
I'm just curious, with the point where the state owns the land, I know the first phase was actually passed and it is all rentals right now. Is there a chance that to get changed and part of that end up being what you want as far as more home ownership? Because I know there's been a change of leadership there in that, and right now there is no home ownership in that first phase.
Yeah, well, I would like to see some of that change for sure. I would like to see more ownership opportunities. We'll be working on potentially, I think, on some condominium legislation as well. We're not having many condos built here. I would rather see condos than apartments wherever we can, and I think that will be important. But by the way, on the apartment side, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of apartments being built, and that one of the issues I see is that what's happened, we stopped building starter homes and condos. We still built some townhouses, but over time, we've just been building big houses and big apartment buildings. And now we've needed more apartment buildings. As again, same thing, just pure economics 101. We've seen the rental prices going up significantly. We're now seeing that start to soften a little bit. I've seen advertisements. I saw an advertisement for 6 months free, for the first 6 months free for somebody moving in, which tells me that we're kind of reaching the right number, right? The prices are starting to come down, and that's going to be helpful for so many people. But we're certainly not seeing it on the ownership side.
Yeah, how do we address the need for more housing supply, more options in homes, while navigating that challenge of respecting the integrity of communities, current homeowners, and what they moved in for?
Yeah.
How do you thread that needle here?
Yeah, look, it's hard, and it's there's no easy answer. But I think I always, you're tired of me saying this, but you'll hear me warn against false choices. Always, always, always false choices. And density done right, and in the right places and in the right way, can actually enhance a neighborhood. And so we've gotten this mentality that either we have a 5-acre property with rolling hills and horse property, or we have like the slums of Chicago. Like those are the two choices. And it's just a false choice. We have great examples in this state of communities where you have significant density, but just incredible neighborhoods, and where it's added to it. Others have written about places where people opposed a development, and there was one, I think it was in Farmington, I may be wrong. I was reading about where they approved it, and the neighborhood was so angry, and they forced them to put up some Jersey barriers, a barrier between the new development and the old development. 5 years later, they've come back and asked the city to take it down. And they said, well, why do you take it down? It's like, well, it turns out we actually like these people. And so that's the kind of thing, again, done right. I'm not saying we have to put as much density anywhere all of the time. That's not what I'm saying. We've tried to be smart. Yes, let's put density where there's infrastructure. That's how you keep the quality of life high. That should be the question, is how do we get to yes and keep the quality of life high? Not no, right? How do we get to yes? And sometimes that's hard for people. And being a leader means sometimes you have to make decisions that are unpopular. And that's the problem with NIMBYism, is you get to represent the people who are there now, but you don't represent the people who could be there. And obviously the people who are there now should take precedent. That's fine. But it's all fun and games until your kids and grandkids are either living in your basement or in Iowa. And those are two really terrible options. And I mean, no offense to my friends in Iowa, but if you're from Utah, you don't want your kids living in Iowa. That's all I'm saying. I pick any other state. It's a short-sighted decision. And again, the incentive structure is broken right now. I'll just throw this out there, and then I'm going to run out of the room because it'll piss everybody off. But we have an incentive structure in Utah that says we're going to reward cities and towns with retail sales. Like that's a conscious decision we've made. It's neither a good nor a bad decision. I mean, it's a neutral decision. We get to decide that, but we've decided that the thing that matters most, if you need money to do stuff in your city, you should incentivize retailers to come in. And so we have a city who said, hey, this is a great project. It looks great. We all support it, but we'd rather have a Costco. That's not a rational, I mean, it is a rational decision, but it's a rational decision based on a set of things that we decided as state government that we're going to reward. It doesn't have to be that way. We could say, we're going to reward you for having more rooftops. That's a decision we could make. And now I'm going to run out of the room. So thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the solutions you're providing. Thanks for this collaboration. Really proud of the people I know in this room. Some of the very best people on earth are right here. And you are the ones that give me confidence that we can actually solve this. I'll end with, and I apologize, some of you heard this before, but I'll end with, again, a friend of AEI, Yuval Levin, who he does not believe in optimism. He hates the word optimism, speaking mostly about our country and how divided it is and some of the problems we're having. I think it fits here too. He says that optimism is this idea that good things are just going to happen. He said, I don't believe there's anything in the history of the world that would tell us that good things just happen. But he says, I'm not optimistic, I'm hopeful. And hope is the virtue that sits between the vices of optimism and pessimism. Hope is what means we're going to do something about it. And I am very hopeful because of the people in this room. So God bless you, and thanks for what you're doing.